Привет, Борис. Остальным тоже привет. Рома, написано все. В описании к видео сейчас будет. Данил, привет. Дмитрий, привет. Нет, я не особо так болею футболом. Артем, может, мне процесс нравится? Может, я не хочу заканчивать? На самом деле это только так кажется, что прямо очень медленно и так далее. Очень много времени заняло освоение той же самой Гаи, прочего добра для атмосферности. Егор, да. Зато теперь можно локации делать буквально очень быстро. А это довольно полезный навык. Так. На сегодня особо так многого, наверное, не будет сделано. В основном я хочу восстановить навыки по анимированию. Анимациями я уже почти год не занимался, поэтому надо вспоминать. Вот сегодня будем вспоминать все дело. Нет, не один. Добрый вечер, Сергей. На прошлом или на позапрошлом стриме, конечно, меня спрашивали по поводу системы строительства. Можно ее выложить сейчас на обсуждение. Меня тут отвлекли по телефону, так что сейчас, секунду. Да, начинаем. Что-то понаписали прямо вообще. Дональд Шримп. С нами связаться? Ну, через контактик, например. Так, что делать? Аддоны практически никакие не используем. А в чем проблема импортировать RAW? Просто берешь, сохраняешь RAW-карту в фотошопе и вставляешь ее в проект. Никакой проблемы. Привет, Дмитрий. Сейчас я вам скину на обсуждение, так сказать. У кого будут ценные замечания, можете туда писать как раз. Ну, значит, она у тебя просто неправильно сделана, RAW-карта, непосредственно в источнике. Что только YouTube? Не только YouTube. Трансляция идет на YouTube, на Twitch, в Одноклассники даже. И еще там в несколько соцсетей. Здрасте, здрасте, с кем еще не здоровался.
Всем привет, с вами снова новый Вести.
Виктор, привет. Да просто анимации. Сами по себе, то есть анимирование персонажа.
Строгие туфли.
Это мы видели, да? Там. Я первый раз вообще про этот сайт слышу, OpenTop. Я использую terrain.pati. OpenTop. mixamo.com. Вот он. Вот так вот пишется mixamo.com. Ой, вот это тупняк. Чего вы мне не сказали, что у меня тут всякая фигня закрыта? Или вам просто пообщаться интересно? Open топография. Не знаю, я сам еще начинающий, но я на мобилы вообще не ориентируюсь. Поэтому, наверное, мне ближе Steam. Ну тут еще без регистрации ничего не сделать, да, так что пофигу. Опа.
Выглядит он сейчас, конечно, не очень, если честно. Сейчас мы настроим все его... они уже все настроены. Ну, по стандарту как бы стоит шейдер стандарт. Не знаю, я, наверное, выберу Legacy шейдер. Так, на все элементы сделаю шейдер.
Вот Legacy шейдеры лучше не использовать, если кто не в курсе. Это просто достаточно старое видео, еще 5 Unity. Но он очень доходчиво все объяснял. Я вот первого персонажа делал как раз по его урокам.
Красиво мне достаточно выбрать Legacy шейдер, транспарент и Google диффузия. То есть, как видите, да, получились такие красивенькие волосики. С очками нужно шейдер прозрачности.
Вот.
Такой же, как и на волосах.
Попробуйте, кто там с террейном мучается.
Брови нам нужно удалить.
Вот эту штуку.
Текстура для них единая вместе с кожей. Так. Так. И... так. Ну вот, в принципе, наша модель готова. Теперь давайте сохраним нашу сцену. Назовем ее просто 1 и сохраняем. И перейдем к созданию самого аниматора. Для этого мы возьмем стандартный аниматор-контроллер из стандартного сета от Unity. То есть откроем сцены. И вот он, персонаж от третьего лица. Открываем эту сцену и просто копируем нашего самого персонажа и камеру. Копировать. Открываем нашу первую сцену, которую мы сохраняли. Получается, и просто вставляем. Теперь нам нужно перетащить все скрипты с нашего контроллера, ну, с персонажа, которого мы копировали, и вставить его на нашего полицейского. Так. Так. У нас автоматически должно было создаться RUB и капсула коллайдер. Капсулу коллайдер нам сейчас надо будет настроить. Значит, центр у него будет выше. Так, настроим немножечко пониже, чтобы он, получается, едва касался пола. Вот так вот. Мы сделаем его потоньше, будет просто удобнее для нас. Вот так вот получается. RUB, в принципе, ничего здесь не надо. И надо поставить аниматор, то есть в стандартных ассетах он есть. Выбираем стандарт assets, challenger, special controller, что там у нас, и аниматор. И вот он у нас один аниматор, и перетаскиваем его просто в контроллер. У нашего полицейского выбираем тег player, а у камеры выбираем таргет на полицейского. В принципе, все. Здесь его, в принципе, можно выключить. И думаю, все сейчас будет отлично. Включаем. И вот мы начинаем бегать. Тоже готовый, получается, такой контроллер. Здесь бегаем. Прыгаем.
Ну да, это есть такая проблемка. Ну вот я ее использую.
Для этого переходим на нашего полицейского. И power jump уменьшаем, например, до 5. Думаю, этого достаточно будет. Еще раз давайте проверим. Так вот. Прыжок. Да, не шибко высоко и не шибко низко. То есть, ну, как бы получается так. При зажатии на Shift у нас проигрывается .
Вот это прикольный контроллер, насколько я помню. Плюс еще всякое добро дополнительное.
Hey, this is Tim with Udi. So I'm getting ready to release the Adventure Camera 3.0, and if you've been following on the forums, you know that I'm actually going to rebrand this as the camera controller, and the reason for that is that the Adventure Camera, now the camera controller, has moved way beyond just a third-person camera. So it started out as a super smooth third-person camera that allowed you to move, you know, pretty much in the vein of something like a Tomb Raider or an Uncharted. And while that is still true, you can use it for that. And
Виктор, у тебя вот этот есть?
You can also do things like use the camera for a first-person game, or even a MOBA or a strategy game. And so what I'm going to do is take you through some of the things that I'm doing here in this camera that you'll be able to use in your game, even if you're not creating a third-person camera. So let's go look at some of how this works, and then some of the different features. So what I've done is following along with what I do with the motion controller and the bone controller, the camera controller, actually is run by a set of motors. And what these motors do is basically tell the camera how to move. So we've got things like the third person.
Там их несколько, там еще есть плавание и прочее. Посмотри тоже.
But you've also got things like the first person motor or the top down view motor. And each of these controls the camera slightly different. But you've also got things you can use like a spline motor, and this makes the camera follow a path, and the transition motor, which actually has worked out really well because what it lets you do is blend two different cameras together. So let me show you what I mean here. If we go ahead and play this and watch what happens.
Да я знаю, я для альфы делал из стандартного. Как раз вот по урокам Карманова. первое, третье лицо. Ну вот это прикольнее, это более комплексное такое.
When I go into targeting view, we start a transition, and when this transition completes, we go into.
Тут просто дополнительные всякие фишки есть, дополнительные анимации, модельки, вот этот краны, вот эти нам, кстати, понадобятся вполне. Вот. То есть отсюда можно много чего использовать. Опять же, вот мне интересно, как делаются лужи на террейне. Тут тоже вот интересно это изучить. We can use all of these different motors, and you can even create your own camera motors to drive the camera how you want, and still take advantage of the asset's collision detection, its ability to zoom, fade, shake, all of that good stuff, all within sort of this camera controller framework. So let's take a look at some of those new motors and see how they work. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one here. So when I play, what I've got here is I've got a path, and the camera is going to follow this path, and then once it gets, it finishes the path, it now basically has transitioned, just like I had shown you before, and it's transitioned into this third-person camera, and now we can control the character just like we saw previously. So this ability to create paths is actually really pretty cool, and you can do things like move the, have mini cutscenes where you move the camera away, highlight an area, and then have the camera move back. So, and the ability to build splines is included in the camera controller. So the other thing we have, of course, is the first-person camera. That motor here is simple. It lets you basically determine if you're going to also rotate the anchor, which I have here. So as the character is looking around, if you look to the left, you can see that he's actually rotating and moving. So this works something like you play Rainbow Six, works very similar to something like that. But you can also disable this feature here that has us rotate the character, and now the camera can actually look around as if it's just from the perspective of a character or maybe a turret or something like that. And of course you've got limits and that you can use over here. So there's lots of different things you can do with this camera beyond just third person. And so I wanted to go ahead and show that here. And I think what we're going to find hopefully is the ability to use things like transit here. You can actually look around as if it's just from the perspective of a character or maybe a turret or something like that. And of course you've got limits and of a character or maybe a turret or something like that. And of course you've got limits and that you can use over here. So there's lots of different things you can do with this camera beyond just third person. And so I wanted to go ahead and show that here. And I think what we're going to find hopefully is the ability to use things like transitions and the spline motor for paths tied into the other standard motors is going to make it really flexible for any kind of game you want to create. So the last one here let's look at is this MOBA style. So I like Dota 2, I play that a lot, and so I wanted to create a camera that allowed us to mimic that. So in this case here, the camera is set at a specific angle, and we can use the keys to move the camera around. We can, by pulling the mouse over to the edge of the screen, we can pan as well, or we can grab the ground and basically drag the ground around, and pressing spacebar will recenter us on the character. So the idea is that if you're creating a strategy kind of game, you could use this camera to basically allow you to control the scene and let your players have a bit more control over what they view. So I hope that all makes sense, and again, this is just sort of a quick introduction, and expect to see the adventure camera rebranded and updated here real shortly. Thank you. вот у него есть с луками здесь. Миксом и миксом, да, там было. Правда, лучник нам тут без надобности, да? У нас все же другой сеттинг. А вот свинг. А вот этот Виктор есть у тебя? Без него оно работать не будет. О, плавание. Вот мы сами писали плавание.
So I thought I'd go ahead and show you the swimming motion pack that I'm getting ready to release on the Unity Asset Store. Now this is an add-on to the UDI motion controller that's also on the Asset Store. And this motion pack is all about being able to dive into water, climb out of the water, swim around. You can swim in a fast mode, which you saw a little bit of here. But you can also swim in a slow mode. So what you see here is the dive while he's running, launches off, goes into the water.
Ну ты мне собери там все, что у тебя есть вот по этой теме.
And you can see that while in this fast mode, when he comes up here, he can go ahead and pull himself out of water. So if you're in a pool and there's a ledge, this works perfectly for that. But you'll also see here that we can come into the water off of, let's say, a beach or something like that. And so this is the slower version of the swimming motion. And so this is great for when you're up at the surface, but you can also use it when you're down underneath the water as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you a little bit of the motion. So here you've also got particle effects. So we've got ripples when you're up at the surface of the water, and those ripples will follow you around. I don't know if you noticed, but while he was underwater, there was also some bubbles that were coming up out of his mouth. So obviously you can customize all those things. You can change out the textures, you can change out the particle effects. As with all of my components, the goal here is to be able to be very modular and let you customize them as you want. So here we go into the dive. You can see the swimming around. It works out really well. We can strafe to the left, to the right. Obviously, some of this depends on your camera system and how your camera follows your character. But here you've got a slower moving swim. And then one of the things that I do is I actually... tilt the body. So as you're going up and going down, if your character is set up with a body transform, I describe that in the documentation. Tilting the character, I think, looks really good. It looks really natural. So anyways, I hope you like it. Check it out. Should be, I'll publish this tomorrow. Probably take about a week for or two for Unity to actually review it and put it out there. But hope. Hey, this is Tim with UDI. So I just pushed out a pretty big update to the motion controller, and what I did was I rebuilt the basic walk run motions that I have. So if you recall, I have walk run pivot, walk run strafe, and walk run rotate, and I also pushed out a new sneak. But the idea behind these three different ways of moving is that you could have different styles of movement with the motion controller. And since lots of people have lots of different games, I wanted to have a couple of different options. And also to sort of use it as a way to show you that even if you don't like the way these three motions have you move, give you some examples of how you could create your own movement. So we're going to take a look at each of these one at a time, and I thought I'd show you some of the changes that we're doing. The big goal with these changes is the responsiveness that some people have mentioned. Is I wanted the movement to feel much more
Дмитрий, прямо под видео написано.
Immediate.
На Twitch и на YouTube ссылки.
I'm sort of putting things in your control, and you'll see here. So walk, run, pivot is similar to an adventure style movement, right? So in games like Tomb Raider, your character is able to sort of walk, face the camera, walk away, and of course as you move the camera you can drive the character as well. But in this style of movement, the character can walk right to you. So some of the things that I've got here in this one is I do have some transitions from start. So for example, if I walk to the right, if I push down, walk to the left, you can see that he's got, I think, what looks like a really good transition. And same with, of course, the pivots. And watch when he stops, he actually stops too. So I've tried to make these a lot more immediate, and I think I've done a pretty good job. But if you want even faster response, down here you can see where I'm clicking. I'm actually going to turn off those transitions. And so now what happens is he just blends in, blends out, and immediately stops. So if your idea is that you want something more immediate, then you can take out those transitions. And so for example, let me put the start transition back on. If I walk to my right, you can see that looks more natural. Now if I take it off and I go to my right, he immediately starts walking, and then I turn the character. So again, you don't have that transition in there, and that will help with responsiveness. The other thing you can do is this smoothing samples down here, is that basically I average the input over time. So basically I take 10 frames of input before I determine what the input is. And what that does is that gives us, see how he's like rotating nice and smooth? That gives us a little bit of a smoothness at the cost of immediate reaction to the keyboard, right? Because I'm actually averaging every 10 frames, I average these out. So if you don't like that and you want immediacy, what you can do is just take that off, and now what will happen is I'm still rotating, but basically there's an immediate response to the keyboard. So when I let up, see how he stops immediately? And it's the same thing when I go as well, is he just starts immediately. So I don't personally like that popping, but what I'm trying to show you here is that with these controls, you can have this as responsive as you want. And with this setup here, a zero smoothness, using no transitions, this is as fast as you're going to get it with the keyboard. There's really no logic going on. I'm just taking the value from the keyboard and pushing it to the animator. So just to give you an idea, that's what this motion has. And then in addition to that, I'm going to put these back the way I like them. In addition to this, I allow you to override the root motion. So let's say you want to swap out the animations and you don't actually have root motion, or you think the speed is too slow. If you set a value, units per second, let's say while he's walking, he'll use that instead of his root motion. Now, obviously 5 meters per second, or 5 units per second is too fast. We can see that he's sliding all over the place, but you get the point, is that you can control these or set them to 0 and use the root motion. Again, the idea is I want you to be able to customize the movements as much as possible so you can get exactly what fits for you. So that's the walk, run, pivot. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. So if I disable that, now this movement style is more like what you'd find in a shooter, in which case the character is always facing forward, and left and right, instead of having him go left and right, actually has him strafe. And so in this case, I'm actually using I'm actually using blend tree, so you can walk in these 360 degrees, and I'm just using the keyboard, so obviously I'm limited that. But using a controller, it's all very smooth and all of that good stuff. And again, we've got the same kind of thing, so if we wanted to smooth that a little bit here, smooth it down. And you can tell this doesn't pop nearly as much as it did before. Now, if we wanted no smoothing and we want immediate reaction to the keyboard, you can see that we're basically immediately playing that animation. Again, it feels a little too poppy to me, so I don't like that. But maybe for a game that you're doing, this fits. And the point is, I want to give you the control of all that. So I like it as 2. And of course, we can also, default to run, have the character run. And I did my best using the Unity animations to put in, running in the different directions. And so obviously we're using animations that I have to clean up from Unity since they're free for everybody. But I think it actually looks pretty good. I think it works out pretty well. So then the next motion that we have is the walk, run, rotate. And the idea behind this one here, I'm going to change a couple of settings here as well on the idle. The idea with this one is that it's sort of a World of Warcraft style movement. And so what happens here is that, like World of Warcraft, I can walk forward. I have it set up where the Q and the E keys strafe. And now the A and D key rotate you, unless you're holding the mouse, in which case the A and D key have you strafe. So this works just like World of Warcraft. And same thing with World of Warcraft. If I'm looking this direction and I'm not holding the mouse down and I move, the camera changes to the direction of the character, right? So the character was facing the boat. I'm not holding the mouse down to move the camera, so now the camera's moved here. Now on the flip side, if I hold the mouse down, meaning I'm controlling the camera, now the character will rotate to the camera view, and that's because I'm using the camera to actually rotate the character here. So again, this minute
что-то подлагивает.
what World of Warcraft does, and it's got the same kind of properties that we talked about before, so you can set basically how responsive versus how smooth you want the actions to be here. And I've already done a little video on Sneak, but we have Sneak as well, and just to show you, again, this is using the same ideas, right? The rotation speed, the samplings, so that you can basically smooth out this movement as much as you want. So I just wanted to run through those, and again, the idea is that you would pick one of these new ones. For your character, or maybe you have different modes and your character can work in, or you can look at them and use them as a basis for creating your own movement style if you don't like one of the 3 I gave you. And of course, as you know, that's really the goal of the motion controller, is that unlike some other character controllers, you don't have to limit yourself to just what I've given you. You actually have lots of options, and you can create your own motions if you want as well. So I hope that's helpful, and it should be live now, so you can get it and start using these newer versions of the motions. Thanks, and I appreciate you hanging out. Bye. Hey, this is Tim with Udi. So I'm getting ready to release the Motion Controller V2, and I thought now would be a good time to show you just how quickly you can use the new Motion Controller and get a character up and running. So what I'll do is I'll set him up, and then I'll go through and I'll explain a little bit about what I did. But the goal here is just to show you how to do it as quickly as possible. So here we've got our scene, nothing fancy. It's got a light, a ground, a camera, we've got a cube that we're going to climb, and we've got Jones here. Nothing in here is from Udi yet. Don't even have an animator controller up here. So let's go ahead and just hit Component, Udi, Motion Controller. Okay, it adds the actor controller that the motion controller uses, and then here's the motion controller.
Да что такое? Что-то напрягает тут. Секунду. Привет покорителям космоса. Главное всегда вовремя. Вообще Касперский обновляется.
And then let's choose a movement style. So we're going to choose an MMO style. Okay. And let's go ahead and let him jump and climb. And that's it. We're done. All set up. So now let's go ahead and run this.
Да что такое вообще, а?